Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on Wednesday, October 23rd at 11:31 a.m. All right, we got a blast from the past here, ladies and gentlemen, for folks that have actually been around the block 2020, 2021, good old school Phantom days. And Phantom was a big thing in 2021. Let's bring them up and I'll continue my rant. We got Beavis on the line. How
Howdy.
are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I am ready to talk about what I talk about oh so often. Let me continue that rant real quick. So, Phantom back in the day, Andre, lovely Andre, everything he's done, for better or for worse, has created some of the most obvious foundational components of this crypto space. Now, Phantom was the first deployment of Curve outside of mainnet. And man, those bridges back in, it was no bridge, multi-chain XYZ, Andre's original implementation. It, it was beyond wonky. It was like you're not going to get your money back if you use this software.
Yeah. The trust me, bro tech.
That was so trust
And
me,
we
bro.
trusted him. So there we go.
Oh, and it did very well in 21, and obviously was solidly. It was over a billion in the initial rollout of that software. I was full on trust me, bro. So Phantom, but it was but more than that. There was more to Phantom, but beyond those pitfalls. We had Beats, Beethoven, and obviously your work with Reaper and everything that and Spooky Swap. That was big stuff. That was big branding. That was big memes back in 21
Yeah.
for Dexes.
Yeah, it felt like Mr. Bones' Wild Ride a little bit. Once you get on Phantom, it's just like a constant nightmare a little bit. It was a lot of fun. I think it was maybe as much fun as you could have. Like I had played around in BNB chain, which was a lot of fun, but it didn't necessarily have the same technical focus. It was like, am I getting scammed here? Whereas people would ship first, ask questions later on Phantom, which I thought was exciting, but also exposed you to a lot of pitfalls, just technically speaking.
Well, in hindsight, we probably have deployed capital to many things we shouldn't have, but
Yeah.
aren't those the most educational of experiences, especially with regard to how we move forward with risk management?
Yeah, definitely. It's like we like to call it the DeFi tuition. And you need to pay your 10, 20, 30 grand in exploits and whatnot before you gain your footing, which
Well
I
said.
think all of us have paid, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, better or worse, and maybe 2021 in our Ethereum mainnet gas fees, which is probably an order of magnitude greater than those numbers for many of folks. That anyway, 2020, 2021, we're heading into 2024. Well, we're in 24, we're heading into 25, but we have our Sonic deploy that's closer than further, and base is on fire, and the lot is still hot, still leading the pack with volume marginally back and forth between it and base. Arbitrum still has the dominant stablecoin quantity, and that's probably where we could focus our conversation, as the stream always does, on stablecoins, dollars. And as we look at the chart, this is mainnet. We can neglect Tron for the point of a DeFi conversation because Tron is basically Tether and TradFi for all practical purposes, not really DeFi. So this chart basically says the entire crypto space is filled with dollars coming in from outside of crypto. What I want to understand, Beavis, with all your work and what you see and all the things that I see, is where are we heading with endogenous, the dollars that we create from within the crypto space? And I like tell me about base chain because there's very
Yeah.
little stablecoin activity on base chain other than USDC.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change. The cool thing is Coinbase is depositing a lot of their USDC on Base, and you might find, and you might be surprised. I learned this just yesterday. Optimism has a lot of USDT deposits from Binance on it. And I was talking to their head of stablecoins, Optimisms, and that was like a wicked revelation. He just opens up this Visa dashboard, which was surprising in its own right. I was like, "What?" And he was looking at stable coins on chain. But yeah, I mean, the decentralized stable, I think, is one of the most interesting design spaces in crypto. Namely because really you're just a token issuer. It's not too complicated, but the problems are enormous. It's really like policy affects the growth and the adoption and the yield, et cetera, more so than any technical mumbo jumbo that you can cook up, if that tracks well with you.
Well, absolutely. It's a token issuance, and it's about the value of that token because it's not a token, because it's a currency dependent on how well you manage the value. And you want the more stable the value, the more trusted the currency unit. And because literally you could peg it to gold, is you're still just managing a particular value of the token slash currency. And and
Yeah,
it is a great peg to gold if it actually sticks to peg. It's all about trust.
yeah.
So how do you manage? So this is what I think you and what I've seen in the paper and your due diligence into CRVUSD, liquidity, and all the other protocols. How do you manage the value of a currency?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there are frankly a number of things that go into it, but I think the two biggest ones are, you know, what is this currency a derivative of? So, okay, it's a derivative of gold, it's a derivative of ETH, it's a derivative of whatever. And how can you use the mechanics? How can you use financial engineering to convert growth in, or rather convert market dynamics into growth in supply and shrinkage of supply, as opposed to growth in price and shrinkage of price. And that conversion is something that's really hard to do. Like, you look at liquidity, for example, they have a really hard time performing that conversion, especially when interest rates are high elsewhere, funding rates are high, because their redemptions are relatively hard to service at scale, because every time you redeem, the price goes up, 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 and up, and it's harder to arbitrage. And also it's interest free. So you obviously have that 0.5% fee, and that can also scale, but we've seen them get carry traded to hell and back for the last little while. And I think we find with something like GHO, which in my opinion is a really well-designed stable coin, they have a hard time simply because they're not as adaptive as they need to be. So, GHO and Aave in general is a story of, some of the best software in the world impeded by process, bureaucracy, governance, wherein things that should potentially be managed automatically or algorithmically are managed by some guy that just got out of college.
Governance, people, it's intervention, to say the least.
Yeah. So, really, we were blessed enough to have someone in our community who we've since hired, named UV. Some of you might know him. He's like a mechanical engineer, literally a rocket scientist, elite guy. And, he proposes probably over a year ago now, hey, we should just use PID controllers for all this stuff. Anything where human intervention is required could be managed by a controller. And since he proposed that, we've seen Morpho implement PI controllers in their markets. We've seen CurveUSD's peg management system, which is awesome. And since then, we've kind of created our own, which we looked at CurveUSD and we're like, dude, this is so dope. I don't think we'll ever get the reverse liquidations unless we steal their swag a little. But looking at how they manage interest rates and how they keep peg, it just made a lot of sense to us. I think the one issue we saw was they're tracking price instead of tracking the supply and demand truly. Because if you're looking at a curve pool, it could be weighted 70-30 in favor of the counter asset, and it would still be 99.9 cents or whatever, depending on the amplitude of the pool. So really, what we've done with our interest rate model is we've implemented a PID controller that can adapt in real time to the weighting of the stable swap pool. So instead of looking at, hey, here's the price, we just look at, here's the weight of asset one to asset two, and we target a 50-50 ratio, which means we can front run any price deviations by looking at that. And ideally, and we use the PID in production on Fractal right now on the Glyph protocol. We've been testing it there in an unincentivized market just to like see what happens, and it works really well. Like we make more money, the interest rate is more adaptive, and there's more natural growth we find than elsewhere. And now, using this kind of autonomous money supply system that we've developed, we are going to be issuing a stablecoin on Base. And there are a lot of other cool aspects of that stablecoin, but that's kind of the start of it. And I don't know how to link. I have like a whole GitHub repo of white papers, which I think might be useful to listeners. But yeah, we start there. We start at how the hell do we keep peg, and how the hell do we make this thing valuable? And then it's like, okay, now how do we capture upside, and how do we convert demand into more stable coins?
I think you've hit on some very key points that are the result of years of practical experience in these markets. And governance only goes so far, requires human intervention to adjust collateralization levels as well as interest rates. And what's the whole point? The whole point of adjusting collateralization is to manage risk. And the whole point of adjusting interest rate is to manage value. So with your controllers, which are, as you described from a curve perspective, but are also like a fraction of the AMOs, it's just automated services that are responding in real time to data that's available and are adjusting parameters of the contracts that control uh, pressures in the system and that influence how people interact with these currency units.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful, but it's hard to put into simple terms how sophisticated these protocols are, and I like to think from a software perspective, it's so much mechanics and so many cogs in the machine, and seeing them automatically spin and adjust is quite remarkable. Uh,
Yeah. And it's funny, the implementation compared to normal DeFi financial engineering is actually really simple. And these systems have been used by engineers for a long time. And I think the analog that I really like is, look at the SpaceX landing of the spacecraft from, what was it, a week ago now, a couple weeks. Um, you know, how do you correct when you're coming in to land in this very specific thing? How do you tell left booster to spit out some fire? How do you tell right booster to give us some thrust? And how do you correct? And that's really by creating reference like, hey, this is exactly what needs to happen. And then you create the detectors being, hey, I'm reading this value on chain to figure out what's actually happening. And then you have a mechanism in place to correct. And that mechanism, instead of thrusters going left and right for us, is just the interest rate, which is going up and down. Okay, low interest rate, grow the supply. It's really cheap loans for everybody. High interest rate, shrink the supply. Everybody needs to pay it down. Everybody needs to unwind. If you're farming, funds over. And it's really as simple as that. And obviously, like, the risk is super high, so a lot of thought needs to go into it, but the implementation is really simple. And as long as you do the proper research, due diligence, make sure you're not like totally missing the plot. It's everybody should be implementing systems like this, frankly.
Reactive systems that are responding to the feedback of data that's available about the status of pricing. It's non-Oracle derived, maybe the balance of pools, as you say. I think that that is an excellent iteration on curve tracking of price, because curve LPs are very stable in price throughout a large swath of the curve,
Yeah.
which is their intentional design, and maybe the balance of the LP is will prove better in a production environment. You got to build it to see how the market responds, and that makes perfect sense in any regard. What we've seen with the automatic response of interest rate, which is done by Fraxlend as well,
Yeah.
uh, that is the only way, as and that's this is Federal Reserve talk here from U.S. Fed. That's how you increase the price of your currency, by increasing interest rates. How do you force people to purchase a currency and potentially pay down debt? By charging them more money.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, how do you do that most efficiently? By actually adjusting the interest rate in real time, tick by tick, it probably would be best. And I think um, by adjusting to LP balance rather than price, you're going to get more time, more granular adjustments. And that is certainly to my liking. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, nice. Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, I think people I mean, they're not, I mean, we've been awakened to the power for a long time, but I think especially our team, we built on liquidity in early 2023. We launched a platform called Ethos Reserve, wherein it was essentially liquidity. We added multi-collateral support, and we rehypothecated the underlying assets to effectively an Aave fork. So it was like, okay, you have liquidity, you have our system that manages kind of the underlying collateral, and you have Aave. And our idea was, okay, we're going to just increase the capital efficiency by a lot, and we're going to be able to solve for the lack of interest rates and liquidity, make more money, and potentially be able to outrun the carry traders, which right after we deployed, within months, funding rates just went through the freaking roof. So, growth was really hard, and we had to sit back and be like, okay, what are truly the factors that would allow us to scale? Because right now, dollar for dollar, our system is one of the most efficient in the business, but it can't scale. Because there's no way in a world where everything is over collateralized, where you have these hardcore like flat fees at the beginning, where everything is like really trying to punish and capture value from arbitrageurs.
Mm.
There's really not a great way to grow. So since then, we've kind of iterated, and now we're at a point where it's like, okay, if we really want to compete beat for beat with your USDCs and your USDTs, we need to just follow the playbook. We need to be the Fed. And being on-chain native, being DeFi native, we can be a better Fed for other DeFi projects than USDC, USDT. And thus, with CDX USD, the goal is to create a system whereby we can open up lines of credit to protocols. We can do protocol to system lending, protocol to protocol lending, and the invariants that govern DeFi allow us to underwrite these risks not really easily, but much more easily. And now we have a stable coin we're in. We look at the dollars, we look at the makers, the fraxes, the AMO is so powerful. The issue is there's not a lot of composability. And so our goal with CDXUSD is, sure, we've got all the cool math. That's not necessarily going to help us scale, but what will help us scale is having the most premium line of credit you can get in DeFi, wherein you can build net new primitives using this technology, because it's not like a flash loan. It's not like you get it, you need to pay it back in one block. We can look at the invariants that govern your system, and we can say, okay, you can do this or you can't do this, and issue a line of credit that way and underwrite it traditionally. And then, even looking at maybe we'll get into it a bit later. This, we're identifying the meme coin market as a place where there's a ton of value being created, and we look at all those fees and we're like, how can we convert those fees? How can we convert that volatility into stable yield and growth and supply? So we're kind of looking at a bunch of different angles, and there's this is a greenfield space right now, frankly, and there are a lot of the systems that exist today aren't built to be like just a totally flexible issuer of credit, and that's what we're trying to do is CDX USD. And then we have Codex Lend, the most feature-rich lending platform in DeFi, more so than Aave V4. We're way ahead of the curve there. Obviously, like lendiness is the real thing
Yeah,
we're pushing for, but
it takes time. Don't
it
worry.
does, and we've been around for a while, and we've I think built up a lot of trust in the space with LPs, and really our goal is like, okay, how can we have the most no nonsense, most practical approach to building these high value at risk systems? Yeah, and then now we're here. So I'm pretty bullish on the next 6 months for decentralized stable coins. Thanks to us and thanks to all the other people. Like everybody's thinking about it, and I think DeFi is like we're built to win. It's we just efficiency in every aspect will just slowly erode USDC and USDT market share. So like every time USDT or USDC grow, I'm like, my serviceable addressable market
Exactly.
has increased. Time to think about how I can chew up some of that. But yeah, it's great field to be in.
Let me expand the scope just a little bit. You said 6 months. I'm bullish on the next 12 years.
Hmm.
What? So see, the
Whoa.
thing is, yeah,
Yeah.
most people don't talk in those time frames. Um, but that is something I remind myself is the only time frame that matters. This is all zero. We're at position zero.
Yeah.
We're looking at, I mean, all right, fine, base chain. Let's look at mainnet. Mainnet has 84 bill. That's zero. That's basically zero. That's 0% of the amount of TVL. I'm not talking TVL. We're actually talking about currency units of overall crypto and non-Bitcoin. Like uh, pick your poison of how to inspect these markets. A total three, or in others, not really dominance. But point being, TVL is different than stables, and all of this, even TVL is at zero.
Yeah.
Um, Grand scheme of things, we're talking 270 plus $1 trillion worth of global liquidity depth that can be leveraged or redirected to bolster value in these crypto markets. And I just, from a 12-year perspective, you're talking 1, 2, 5, 10 trill
Yeah.
um, of on-chain and 20, 30, 40, 50 trill of off-chain as capital migrates from traditional finance to these markets for purposes of capital efficiency, interest rate arbitrage, geopolitical arbitrage, and even geographic arbitrage. This just busts down borders, eliminates frictions. So what I like to remind myself of is anything we see here now is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's like the first atom of the iceberg punching the surface layer. And I mean, I mean, we're 4 years into this
Yeah.
entire
It's
economy.
crazy to think about.
Folks love to lump what happened over the last 4 years post 2020 into crypto, Bitcoin, crypto, 2009. Compare 2019 to 2020, like Aave Lend, not even Aave Lend in 2019, and Uniswap V1 with like quarter mil, a half a mil. That's how much there was in Q3, Q4 2019. So this entire economy of economies didn't exist prior to 2020. And then Binance decided to come in from left field and do Binance Smart Chain. And everyone's like, oh my God, they're going to duplicate Ethereum. And then Justin with his Tron, oh, another duplication of Ethereum. No one really saw, no one saw any of this. When we were looking at USDC and USDT in like 17, 18, 19, you're like, what the hell are they doing putting dollars in crypto? It's like, what the? It was just such a weird concept. And now post 2020, it's so much more obvious. But it does take this 4 years to just finally start to see where things are heading over the next 4, 8, 12 years.
Yeah.
Very fascinating. So we got, for instance, on base, which is your target market for CDX USD. Is that correct?
For now, yes.
That makes sense, all things considered. Base is on fire, and obviously optimistic superchain and Arbitrum, and that's the entire Ethereum mainnet L2 space. We're at $3.4 billion worth of USDC, and next up is Dollar at 90 mil. So what does that say? That tells us that the entire landscape of endogenous, the dollars created within the market, hasn't even started yet.
Yeah.
It's just people starting to understand what the hell a dollar is, and and, and it's not just leverage. I mean, what is a dollar? I mean, it is leverage, but there's reasons to produce dollars other than leverage. That's what these markets have yet to really digest.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, you think of the dollar as the yield product, the dollar as the credit instrument, the dollar as the unit of transfer, the dollar as the store of value, and then maybe the dollar as kind of the unit of affinity, being I don't want to hold USDC. And you can like keep going down and down and down the list, and I'm sure I'm missing quite a bit, but um, there is a lot. I mean, that's why I say the space is greenfield. It's just
Mhm.
like you know. People aren't doing enough with these dollars. It's like a lot of people are satisfied. Like let's grow the liquidity pool as much as possible. Let's make that our KPI and move on to the next thing, which I feel is like what's the point? For us, we think about velocity. How useful can we make a single unit in our system? How much yield can a single unit generate? How many transfers will happen in a day with each single unit? What are people actually doing with them? And for us, it's not as simple as we're gonna let people buy coffee with their dollars. It's like we've been doing that for years now, and people don't. It's not that exciting. It's like we have Venmo. We don't need weird fintech reg arb just to buy a coffee. um, but I think more so, um, using these dollars as a way for people to access things they love in a way that is maybe cheaper, faster, more efficient. So for us, that's what are we attaching our dollar to? What is our dollar a derivative of? And what is a derivative of our dollar? What are we moving back and forth? And for us, we see one really interesting space that a lot of financial engineers are ignoring because it's stupid. Um, but having like the most insane reg arb, having CTFC compliance, having all of the craziest factors lending to its success. Frankly, I don't think it's stupid. I think it's stupid right now because
Yeah.
the systems are in their infancy, and that for us is meme coins. So you look at a meme coin. I'm a stable coin farmer. I'm a stable coin lover. I'm the most regular person of all time, but I see meme coins and I'm like, okay, like this is the ultimate expression of like the desire of crypto, of the volatility of the use case. I look at the numbers, 20% on pump fund, 20% of traders are winning, which by TradFi standards is bonkers. It's absolutely insane. And that is with, I know there are probably dozens of HFT firms, quant firms, whatever, just rugging coins all day long because it's technically compliant. It's like I'm creating a secondary market. I'm adding liquidity. I'm removing liquidity. I live in Dubai or Bali or somewhere. It doesn't matter. And for us, we think, okay, we have this credit instrument. We have this ability to open up these lines of credit. How can we enhance this market, and how can we capture some of that fees, or some of those fees, some of that volatility, and bottle it into a stable coin so that
Mhm.
people like me can see that exposure and see that growth? And really it's like, okay, we see growth in, let's say, this AMO, this liquidity pool here, there, the other. Obviously our goal is to convert the growth and demand for our liquidity products into growth and supply for the stablecoin, and growth in yield being yield denominated in dollars, not percents. So people can't dilute it. And so we've created this thing that is really simple, but also hard to understand, almost because it's so simple, that we're calling the liquidity AMO. And the liquidity AMO, if you're familiar with like Uniswap mechanics, is ultra simple. 100% of meme coin is issued to the pool with an equal amount of CDX USD that is drawn from an open line of credit to the platform, which escrows the LP, potentially burns it, and ensures that the governing mechanism of the AMM is the only thing that can impact the issuance of the stable coin. And thus, we have a system whereby you launch, let's say, Cat Coin. You launch Cat Coin, and let's say you want to launch it at a market cap of $200,000. You want to skip the snipers. You want to pump up opportunity costs for some of the more nefarious folks, and you want to address your market, which is your friend group, your immediate friend group. And your friend group, they're all software engineers. They don't want to buy a zero value token. Their wives are going to hit them with a broomstick. So you're like, I want to launch this at $200,000 market cap. With CDX USD on our launch platform, you launch it at a $200,000 market cap. The platform draws $200,000 from the line of credit. It pairs it up. It deposits it. It escrows the LP, and it structures the fees such that you, as the creator, can see upside with the volatility. And so every unit of demand that floods into Catcoin is basically a unit of free liquidity being routed through our stablecoin pool. So let's say we have CDX USD USDC pool. User wants to buy Catcoin. They need to back the CDX USD that's truly entering circulation at the point of purchase. So I like to call it, notional liquidity or synthetic liquidity that becomes real liquidity at point of purchase,
Very
leveraging
interesting.
all AMM mechanics, and thus there's going to be volatility. We may see some ups and downs depending on how big this system gets, but every single unit of currency is going to be in the market backed by that dollar. And then obviously in the lending market with the autonomous money supply, that the dynamics or the mechanisms are in place to tighten things up when they need to get tightened up. And so essentially we see this as a really fabulous way to grow a stablecoin from ground zero, because now we have a PSM, which for us is just a limit order, a single tick limit order at $1 on Uniswap. So every router instantly supports it. And boom, you have a way for users to launch meme coins at any market cap with any amount of liquidity, whether it be 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, a billion, which would effectively be a stable coin, but maybe, we'll let you brag to your mom. Oh, I'm a founder of $1 billion project. And on the other end, we
I
have
get some bids.
yeah,
People move the
yeah.
market 0.001%, and
Yes, dude, that's my favorite. And then on the other
so
side, we have free growth and free yield. Well, not free, obviously, a lot of work went into it, but all of that kind of coalesces around the stable coin, which can become an institutional product in its own right, or a myriad of other things.
that's a lovely product. We've seen this trend with how to better organize, better be strategic with the launch of meme coins, and I think this is certainly in line with this trend. We've seen it on Phantom a little bit, obviously Pumped Out Fun, but I think your implementation uh, combined with the dollar primitive that you've envisioned and implemented is unique, to say the least. So I look forward to seeing the market dynamics in play. What I think of often is who who is most likely, from a large structural perspective, wanting to significantly increase supply of dollars. And from a base perspective, that's Coinbase,
Yeah.
because they get sequencer fees. And then with their ownership of Arrow, they're literally getting transaction fees or governance fees, however they want to capture revenue from on-chain activity, just arbitrage probably. But how do they increase liquidity in the space for that kind of transaction volume to occur? All right, let's park our capital or their assets as collateral, and you significantly over collateralize, so they're taking relatively little risk. Their risk management department goes over it, 25%, and they're printing stable coins in the space, significantly increasing the liquidity. So what they need is that infrastructure
Yeah.
that has proven itself with lendiness and trust that they can use it as a facility to increase the liquidity in their market. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like an economy, and that sounds like maybe not the central bank, but they have a policy. They have a vested interest in the volume and transaction fees that economy produces. So maybe that's like a tax revenue. That's a governor of sorts. And but what's so interesting from for a 12-year perspective, that's just Coinbase and Base. This whole optimistic super chain's insane to try and wrap your head around the scale and scope.
Yeah.
Sony in Japan, what they're doing is
Crazy. So crazy. And the thing is, like, okay, they're making sequencer fees. Think about what's happening with the USD coin backing. It's like all of that yield, all of the short duration treasuries, like it's bonkers. Like the amount of revenue that they pull in is totally insane. And I don't know if you know, but our team ran Optimism's Superfest. So their whole DeFi campaign, where they work to onboard Morpho, get Aave onboarded, get everybody bought in. We managed that whole thing. And in doing that, every single team building on this chain, we've built pretty strong relationships with Optimism, Base. I think to say we've become deeply integrated into the ecosystem is almost an understatement. And really, our goal is like, at the end of the day, I think in our most successful outcome, CDXUSD is somewhat, or to a certain extent, a derivative of USDC,
push.
an easy way for them to grow supply. Um, and then, thinking about, okay, what happens in that PSM if there's $100 million? And this is what we've been thinking about. And there's kind of these two forks in the road. There's fork number one being, we're going to go all in on decentralization. We're going to diversify. So imagine instead of one $100 million pool, five $20 million pools with different assets. So CDXUSD becoming an arbitrage facilitator. And think even further, okay, what if there's too much liquidity? So if you look at DOLA on Aerodrome, that's a case of too much liquidity. There's not enough volume. There's not enough activity per unit. So there's
Interest
this other
rates.
path being, what if we go the compliance route? What if we talk to ADGM regulators? What if we get the CBIT license? What if we work directly with institutions? What if we start getting treasury yield on CDXUSD so that any kind of less active supply is out there being productive for us? And the nice thing about it is, and users kind of hate this. We've been very hardcore about compliance from the early days. It's like we stay ahead of the curve on regulation. We're very careful, and that's put us in a really unique position. We're in. We've developed a lot of trust with institutions. Obviously, our products weren't super scalable before because it required over collateralization. There's this fee. Nobody wants to take a $50,000 hit the second they open a position. But what that gives us is, let's say we do go this route where we plug into the CBIT network, which is essentially the send replacement from Customers Bank. And now it's like, okay, hey, instead of market making on chain with USDC or USDT, use USD or use CDXUSD. And then you look at these firms that are having a difficult time underwriting these liquidity pools or these market making deals on chain. You look at the loan option agreement. It's really like it's kind of brutal for the market maker. That's why a lot of the more reputable ones are only touching the biggest assets with the most backing, because then it's just like, we don't, the turbo dump isn't as prevalent. But we want to see CDX-USD replacing on chain as like, here's this line of credit on chain, Wintermute. You can draw from it on demand. It's papered up off chain, and now we have a truly on-chain stablecoin that has the capabilities of a USDC, USDT, while still kind of drawing some strengths from it. Because you go off chain, Circle is like, or Coinbase and Circle combined, they're like the beast mode issuer of credit for institutions. And USDT, I'm not as familiar with, but I'm sure is the same in the East. But that's like what we're scratching our chins about now. And I think it will be dictated by where is the market going the next year or 2 years, 3 years. And if you look at Stripe's acquisition of Bridge, for example, like people see how amazing and how insane stablecoins are for settling transactions. And, there are, call them routes. There are places in the market where USDC and USDT aren't knowledgeable enough to touch, being these are TradFi guys, not DeFi guys. They're not, reading, Ramsey's papers, thinking about how to optimize routing through CDX-USD. They're just like, we're chuds. We have our KPIs. We're going to achieve them at all costs. But, having kind of a nuanced DeFi native approach to the credit market for us is, I can't think of anything cooler. Like, I imagine, what's it like to build a primitive when you can draw from a line of credit on demand, mint and burn on demand anytime. And suddenly, like the yield products we can create, the leverage products we can create, the design space just blows up. It's not just flash loans anymore. It's not just weird off-chain deals anymore. It's like truly composable credit.
For instance, we are literally discussing reimagination of clearinghouses, flash loans. Flash loans are like literally, that's the repo market. That's where banks borrow from one another to settle transactions, but either overnight because it's slow AF in TradFi, or maybe just one block because it's not
Yeah.
TradFi, and we actually fix the frictions and inefficiencies of TradFi. So that's we're rebuilding the repo market in one block instead of overnight. And the reverse repo market is kind of like when it's like staked CDX USD, and that there's plenty of incentive to have that above the risk-free rate of return. There's plenty of incentive for that to be above the inflation rate, and that's probably from a government level as well. I mean, it's just like permutations of where all this heads over the next 4, 8, 12 years, and that's what I always try and wrap my head around. Or this space becomes a component of TradFi on how to facilitate what is needed in a real world landscape. These are tools that cannot be done in traditional finance. There's too much risk in traditional finance.
Yeah.
But when it becomes deterministic
Mm-hmm.
and you're inspecting software that has existed, for instance, on chain for, let's say, 4 years, 8 years, and here's 8 years of history of how these algorithms behave. Imagine from an insurance perspective, how many employees are you operating? 0.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how many employees does the clearinghouse have? 10,000. What's the OpEx and CapEx requirements of the clearinghouse? Now we're going to replace it with 8 years of uninterrupted 24/7 execution of clearinghouse operations with 0 employees, 0. Oh my God. Oh my God.
It's if we hire from fintech, we hire from aerospace quite a bit, and we do a lot of like apprenticeships, things like that. And you plug someone from fintech who's managing, dozens of microservices, and this is at the tippy top. This is ignoring the mountains of technical debt that fintech is built on. But you show them, hey, my uncle is drinking beers and, you know, perfectly managing $4 billion of value at risk. Oh, what's his job? Oh, he just answers questions of the Discord and the systems handle the rest. It's like it's just an insane new paradigm. And obviously, like, the reality is a lot goes into DevOps, a lot goes into DevSecOps, a lot goes into the management of these protocols, especially when you're thinking about a lending market or when you're thinking about a credit instrument like CDXUSD. But you can scale maybe 100 times better, 1,000 times better, thinking about baseline Fortran, COBOL, TradFi systems. And, you know, kind of our DeFi thesis is, and the reason that I mean, you know, we're taking pay cuts to work in this industry and build. We're like, you know, banging our heads against the wall. And the reason we do that is because we know for a fact that DeFi and on-chain finance, as Coinbase wants to call it now, uh, it is the solve for TradFi technical debt. It is like if you're a CTO and you're managing, you know, your TradFi company and you're hiring, you know, your CIO is like hiring. You've got all these cybersecurity concerns, more and more and more. There will, no matter what, be a point where the cost of maintaining and the cost of migrating, which is a huge cost, the cost of
Right.
migration is going to flip. And then, you know, really at that point, it's thinking, okay, how do we wind down this 10,000 person operation, which is a bigger issue than even like the technical. It's like, okay, we need to migrate to DeFi. It's absolutely imperative. The attack surface is too great in our current tech stack. The technical debt is too great. We can't convert. It's impossible. And then the question becomes, how do we unwind? We have, you know, hundreds of people with tenure. You know, we have hundreds of people who we've trained up and invested in. You know, we need to push them toward retirement. And this, you think about a company like BlackRock, who's already looking into decentralized exchanges, who's already creating these tokenized products. They're thinking again. The 12 years is nothing to them. They're thinking in the 100-year time frame. It's how do we initiate that migration
Yep.
wherein we can start investing, we can start building up these systems and slowly but surely replace, retire until it's one-to-one, everything is on chain. And that is an absolute inevitability. I think with DeFi, like it's I mean, I can't say it enough. It's not about if, it's about when. These systems
Push.
are amazing. It's like you show a CTO of a TradFi or fintech company this shit, and they will go crazy. That's why Stripe is investing. That's why everybody, Stripe is like, they've got the cleanest code, they've got the best design, they're geniuses, and they're shaking in their boots because they know that all the work they put in trying to abstract away the technical debt of TradFi is just dust in the wind, because blockchain resets the base layer. It's not Fortran, it's not COBOL, it's a modern language, a modern architecture built based on decades of learnings in software engineering.
And the
And there you go.
modular becomes components that have lendiness, trust, and immutability. The immutability is what really changes everything for me in my mind, because when something is and it's immutable, it becomes like infrastructure. It's an unquestionable consumable.
Yeah.
I give one. What was my thought? I had one final thought, and then we could do some comments if anyone has anything um, from our viewers. Yeah, here's the thought. So long-term time horizon. Everyone gets hung up, especially like maximalist of sorts, and it could be any kind of maximalist on dollars, and they conflate the dollar with the perversion of TradFi. And I myself am very vocal on social media about the realities of the traditional financial clusterfuck, to say the least. Debt to GDP, so on and so forth. It's an absolute disaster. That's not. It's not. That's a problem of government. It's a problem of treasury. It's a problem of the Fed. It's a problem of policy. It's a problem of people. Not a problem of the dollar. The dollar isn't what people think it is. What is pertinent is a unit of account, and frankly, the number one. The number one from an accounting perspective
Yeah.
and double entry accounting. So that's how you could probably pierce through all the insanity of traditional finance. What do you need in a financial system is the number one and
Yep.
collateral.
Yeah.
And then currency is a derivative of collateral. And currency expands and contracts dependent on supply and demand to manage the relative value of a centralized currency unit or a currency unit as compared to the goods and services. This is like the type of conversation of a barter argument: one pig for one cow, or and then how many cows versus sheep and how many cows versus hens. And then you take all of it and it's all denominated in that currency unit.
Yeah.
How do you manage the value of that currency unit relative to varying denominations of consumables? So this is the construction, or the what we're just discussed the entire stream. It's the construction of the base layer primitive of a financial system.
Yeah.
And it should not, even though we're talking in terms of dollars and value of these currency units relative to a historic United States dollar, do not conflate these types of primitives with the clusterfuck that which is the U.S. government.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you, and you might get a kick out of this. I joined, like, I thought crypto was a scam until 2020 when I learned about DeFi. Um, and the reason I learned about DeFi and the reason I became interested in crypto is because I saw an article pitching it as a triple entry accounting solution. And I
Mm,
was like, whoa. And at the time, the company I was working for, which, this health tech company in Chicago, they were going through this audit. They were like doing really poorly. And I was like in the trenches trying to like figure out where these discrepancies were. My manager was freaking out, stressing. I was like researching better accounting solutions. And this is like a good account, like finance department. Like, these people are pretty smart. And it's like, dude, how are you dropping the ball like this? And it was stressful. And literally, Google algorithm served me up an article about Bitcoin as a triple entry accounting solution. And I read it, and it just flipped. I was like, wow, this is the future. And then, I was going down the rabbit hole. I learned about DeFi, and I was like, holy shit, this stuff is real. And then I literally, I put my life savings in Phantom at a penny. And then I shifted my career entirely toward Ethereum security, and then eventually, obviously, smart contract engineering, and then management, whatever. Now I have to be freaking CEO, which, for better or worse. And now I'm here. So it's like, I think there will be more of those moments again and again and again and again as every year goes by.
yep.
People in finance departments looking for solutions, getting algo sniped by Google, reading about Bitcoin, and then boom, it's
They
like,
wake up.
yeah. And it really is. It's just um, a way better system, and it's like, I'm trying to think of a good um, step change improvement that resulted in like a total paradigm shift in the markets. It's like um, going from slicing bread with a knife to automatic bread
Yeah.
slicer. It's just insane, and suddenly you've not necessarily removed margin for error, because there's still the human condition, and we're working on solving that with AI. But
Yep.
you've at the very least have a perfect ledger, and a perfect ledger is just like, I dream about it. My fiance is an accountant. It's like the implications of universally perfect ledgers is just bonkers. And it I go to sleep smiling, knowing that we're on the way there.
Determinism, predictability. It takes the human condition out of the things that we need to interact with. Now, obviously, all of this ends with the same conundrum as AI. It's like how do you fix the problem with human resources? Get the human out of human resources. So it brings us back to like what a lot of folks are talking about right about now. What happens once you get AGI? It's what is the point of a human? What do we
Yeah,
do other than consume? Because we're clearly not going to be able to compute as fast as the computers that we are building, yet we can create the computers that we are building. So we're at the maybe that inflection point of where
yeah,
we really need to think uh, um, existentially of
yeah.
what the hell our purpose is as a human.
Humans, in my mind, just kind of become via consumption the selection algorithm. We kind of switch. It's like, okay, we have these units of account. We have, infinite productivity. I don't think post scarcity is going to be possible anytime soon, but we have at the very least highly efficient, highly sustainable systems. Now, you as a human, your goal is to be creative, try to create net new things on one hand, and on the other hand, use your buying power to select for the net new things that deserve to be distributed widely. And that in itself is really productive. And that's a really great way to maintain kind of the course of capitalism, I think. Um, and I'll tell you critically, like from the critical perspective, I would say like I look at things in terms of class. I don't think Marx was necessarily right about that much, but at least looking at things uh, critically, it's like, all right, history has been built on like the cheapest labor humanly possible. Like
Pretty much.
wealth disparity is kind of a function of growth and a function of this selection process. And when we get to a point where humans are abstracted to the point of being that selection process purely, and we as administrators of these systems can optimize for that, I feel that a lot of these huge existential issues melt away over the course of hundreds of years. And I AI slop is going to be like a forever thing, but in the same way, like soap operas are a thing. It's like there will always be dreck. There will always be shit that we consume. And you know what? I like consuming shits. Well, not actual poop, but I watched reality TV shows. I watched those AI slop like cat, yacht save the kitten videos, and I like laugh. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. And the thing is, like, we can't like be pretentious about this stuff. It's like humans are going to be humans. We have needs, we have desires, and how can we just optimize to make sure that the most people possible have their needs met, one, and have the opportunity to ascertain or access their desires.
So equity. We don't want to go DEI, do we? Or maybe we
Yeah,
do. I don't know.
I think it's just access to opportunity is really, I think, the big thing. It's like you're not going to solve for people not wanting to get up off the couch.
Yeah.
That's why they invented couches, weed, and video games for people who don't want to participate. Which who gives a shit? It's not my problem.
Fine.
It's like more value for me to capture in the market. I'll take your share.
In that regard, I do like that equity component. People really should have an opportunity to make a choice to be productive or not to.
Totally.
And that's part of the human condition. Let's do some commentary. If there's any, I'll keep the commentary, ladies and gentlemen, to not just hellos and good mornings today, respecting Justin's time. The tomb will always be a peak phantom in my book. Oh my goodness, we had
Did
some
you?
time.
I had enough exposure via Reaper. I could not touch it.
That was wild times. Um, where's the best place to start if I want to learn how to deploy my own DeFi projects with the end goal of deploying on Sana? That's good questions for you. My 2 cents is first need to be quite proficient in a language of choice, be it Solidity or Viper, and obviously primitive uh, parts of the language, structures, data structures. You don't even need to learn Solidity for data structures. You take a data structures class, and most of that type of class is semantics and just understanding how those types of primitives work to build the primitives that you want to actually consume. Um, I don't know how to start programming. It's hard to say how to start programming when you've been like I've been doing this for 14 years. I do
Yeah,
Android for a living, and I was trying to show my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, and I'm like, where the hell do I begin? It's like I
yeah.
could sit down
I've
and write an
trained a
app.
ton of engineers, and I'll tell you, when you're starting from zero, download the Mimo app, learn Python, learn JavaScript, just get an understanding of how machines interpret things.
Also,
Once you've achieved your diamond status and completed the courses on the Mimo app, I would, kind of grind YouTube videos and tutorials like project walkthroughs, like let's build a web app or let's build a Uniswap fork. There are a ton of stuff like that. You just follow it step by step. You mess up a bunch of times, you get frustrated, and eventually you figure out how Node works, and you have a less difficult time. And then really from there, I would read Pragmatic Programmer. I would read Fundamentals of Software Architecture. It's an O'Reilly book. It's $30. I would say it's the best book for beginners across the board. And maybe like peruse, watch a YouTube video about algorithms, or read like, if you want to get really crazy, they have a JavaScript version of SICP now, and books like this, like the algorithms book, design patterns, whatever. It's like they'll take you years to get through, because it's like you just trip. You're like, what? And then you go back and you realize your program. You're like, oh, well, now this is starting to make sense. You go back to it. You read another handful of pages. You're like, oh, what the heck? And then you go back, blah 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 blah. And then after you've done maybe 6 to 12 months of really hard work and study, congratulations, you're probably at a junior level, and then the rest is experience. Um,
yeah, yep.
and
That
yeah,
sounds.
you don't get a big head before you've deployed production systems. I would say is the number one thing. You could have read all the books under the sun. You could be the best at practice projects. Consider yourself dumb as a bag of rocks until you've deployed to production, because that's what it takes. Being able to be decisive about implementation, about design, about deployment, about DevOps, etc. That can only be achieved through experience. And then once you're a junior engineer, just fork stuff, deploy it, and don't try to roll your own systems unless there's zero value at risk, even if you're really confident, because confidence, I think, is a sign of inexperience in software, at least, especially for high value at risk systems.
That is speaking like a CEO right there.
Or I mean, easy. Just get in the Codex Discord,
Ah,
COD3XORG on Twitter. We've been helping people deploy on Phantom and elsewhere for 4 years now.
I think that is a great answer for DeFi Cobalt, because Sonic is a great way to do mini projects, relatively inexpensive, obviously, L2 type of cost. And I mean, like, then again, that's what testnet's for, but you probably want test and prod. I mean, guys, that's the Andre way, and just don't have anyone set limits on financial numbers so people don't get hurt. And I have no problem testing and breaking prod. I'm a fail fast kind of developer rather than test everything. Uh, I've had I've seen some incredible code in my day. One time there was 99.9% unit test coverage at this company I worked for out of Canada, and that was so elegant. Dude, they went to prod and there was just one thing to adjust. It was like
Wow.
prod deploy. I've never seen coverage like that before in my life. But it also took, 5 times as long to get to prod deploy compared to
Yeah.
another project where, just fail fast and update, update,
Yeah. It's
update.
like we take a lot of our uh, like rule books from aerospace. You got to think about this like, okay, you're launching a rocket. There's no second chance.
Yeah.
Cycles are way longer. Development is way more expensive. And the best thing a beginner can do, just freaking fork something, give it a shot. Don't get creative, and learn how to operate it, because you're going to run into your own handful of pain just in developer operations. and like people learn Solidity and they're like, ah, yes, it's time. I'm a god. And then they realize, oh, now you need to learn either Master Foundry or learn JavaScript or learn Rust, learn DevOps, learn DevSecOps, learn how to build monitoring tools, learn how to build emergency response tooling. A lot goes into serving users the way they need to be served in DeFi, just because it's like, that's their money,
Well said.
yeah.
Yeah. I was whenever I speak about this, for everyone's knowledge in the audience, I have almost infinite wiggle room because I'm dealing with user interfaces and the opposite of money. I'm dealing with nothing related to money.
You're
So
dealing with annoying tickets.
the drop down
That's your enemy.
the button had to be clicked twice, or the color was wrong, or yeah. But anyway, good point, guys. DCA man, UV's a beast. That was a point said earlier. Charles, DeFi, I think you are absolutely correct on this one. That's to you, Justin.
I think that was to you, actually.
No, that's to us. We've been
Oh,
doing this a
nice.
long
Okay,
time.
heck yeah.
Yeah. The Codex reference.
Thank you,
Uh,
Dex. We've got the whole crowd here.
Crew's in the house. DA advisor, much a pleasure. Tape pusher. John Steps. Beavis, has someone who's built projects, gone through exploits, bridge disasters. Do you have any thoughts on the tapioca exploit and the steps they need to do to right the ship? Well, if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean, from like a business perspective, I think they need to like, I
I got my two
the
cents.
the best way for them to be successful long term is to basically say sorry and move on. Um, and that's not easy, but it's like DeFi has downside risk. If you are earning above the risk-free rate, then you need to expect that there's going to be really significant downside risk to match as yield scales. And Tapioca is like, everybody knows/knew it was a very creative team, not necessarily a security minded team, or they would have built a much more concise code base, which is fine. The result of creativity is beauty. It's net new primitives. It's excitement. It's amazing. But people that invested need to grasp that reality. There's no amount of blogs or this, that, the other that can like just reweight their team from the creativity zone to the security zone. So accept that it happened. Team says sorry. They move on. We use O tokens. We tip our hat to Tapioca. Without them, we would be a less profitable company. And from there, it's really like, think hard to me about product. If you remember Granary, we learned really fast that one token, many chains doesn't work that well. We convinced Ramses that it doesn't work that well, and now they have their omni-chain model and are able to survive and be successful in a hyper-competitive landscape. They probably convinced Liquidity to a certain extent for V2 to do the same. We drew inspiration from Sunna and from Velodrome and Aerodrome, and I think really with Tapioca, it's like, if you're going to be the creative guys, you need to find places to fix scope and optimize for the creativity in an air-gapped, tight, really like high degree of confidence manner. That's my opinion on Tap. I mean, they're like, I think I was very sad that it happened. They have swag. Their website is cool. I think their mechanics are cool. They're always trying to innovate. They're always trying to replace governed systems with autonomous systems, which I think is amazing. But now it's about moving on, adjusting scope, adjusting trajectory, and figuring out how to fit into the market. And I think this is a chance for them to reset, because when they started their journey, the market has changed quite a bit in the past couple of years. So I wish them the best of luck, and happy to talk to them if they want some words of advice or whatever from someone who's been through the trenches 1,000 times there and back. But yeah, I was very sad that they couldn't make it to production without something happening.
Little hiccup. I think this will be a bump in the road in hindsight, and I take this as basically a very legal statement from their counsel. And I think this really sums up their path forward, the most reasonable path forward from a legal standpoint. Snapshot prior to incident, period,
Oh,
done.
bada boom.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's like let the market do what the market does,
and they get mainnet out. And you got whatever liquidity there is, you go after the law enforcement, see if you can get some liquidity back. They got some Ethereum back. You
yeah.
reset up your liquidity pool the best you possibly can.
Yeah.
And
As
obviously,
much
if
as
you,
users hate it, it's like the reality, and they do this or they die. And I think it's a
yeah,
very astute decision, and it's a hard decision, and it just had to be done.
but they're setting up mostly, basically, if you engaged with this token after the breach, you got nothing to stand on. The damn protocol was hacked, and you're buying 99% discount
Yeah.
tap. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, it's like, it's everybody needs to accept these risks, and the thing is, like, as I've been through 1,000 of these, war rooms for other teams, helping people write postmortems, writing postmortems, being through all this stuff, it's like, even after an airdrop, people with a vested interest in your airdrop being big, huge, fat, whatever, they took the risk in farming it, and they are going to advocate potentially viciously for it to be higher, greater, et cetera. And as a protocol, you need to first not seed ground, and second, think about what is fair and what is equitable.
Yeah.
And like, you can be fair, and being fair isn't always being nice. Being fair is sometimes being really brutal. But these market participants, if you're in DeFi, you're sophisticated, and if you're not sophisticated, then sorry, it's like, you've paid your tuition. Welcome to the club. You're sophisticated now, and it's just like, we have a history of being way too nice at a very significant cost. We've paid out maybe $2 million in things that we weren't liable for, in the history of our organization. And luckily, it's been years since we've had an incident like that with our software, and we've learned a lot of lessons. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you're getting 20%, then understand what comes on the other end of that yield. And sometimes it's pain, and sometimes it's glory. And that is the power of finance, and that's the power of DeFi. We're moving the levers of risk and return up and down for you, and you get to kind of pick your poison.
Well said. We appreciate it. I'm sure the entire community appreciates that feedback on a very sensitive topic. I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience have some exposure to tapioca in one way, shape, or form.
If you're in the DeFi industry, you have exposure.
Yeah.
Tapioca, I think, was like, everybody was like, "Oh, dude, DeFi, yeah, fuck yeah." But and then this happens. It's like, it's like seeing your favorite horse just trip right before the finish line. It's just totally at when they're in the lead. It's just totally devastating, and it's also the nature of the business. And they're going to be way better at security, I'm sure, after this than they were before.
For everyone's reference, I am cool and calm as the captain always is. I was first round seed at Tapioca. I was probably like the second investor. And it
Nice.
was they were like talking about it in what, 23? It was like early 23. No, it was 22. December something 22 is like it was just an idea. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. Here's money. So lo and behold, a couple years later, it's all going to be just fine, everyone. Chill out, relax, give it 4, 8, 12 years. It's all going to be okay. In respect for your time, Justin, if there's any other comments, let me just check. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for you. Crypto uh, is lore coming to base. Arrow.
we so like I said, we do kind of the Ramses thing a little bit, and we're always like looking for new catalysts, new opportunities, new places to suit the market on a given chain. So it's like, we're selling levered beta to a blockchain, and mode, being levered beta to mode, has not been easy for the past few months, as you might guess. So we were like, okay, mode has moved to base. Some of the other protocols have moved to base, Aerodrome specifically. So we're like, okay, let's do it. And the alpha is, we have some interesting licenses that we've gained access to for the base network and the mode network. And, we want to have Ironclad assume control of them and have like this cool kind of two-pronged strategy. And Lore is our protocol on Scroll. And I think, when you are levered beta, your goal is we are going to be a tool for X network that we're on to achieve their KPIs. And that is our service to them. That is our service to the network. We go with the flow. Momentum goes up, we go up with it. Momentum goes down, we go down with it. So on Scroll, I feel like they don't have an identity yet. Their identity is we're Ethereum, which is a cool identity, but there's not a lot to do with that. So right now, we're talking to their team a lot. We're talking to other teams on the network, and it's really like, I don't think Scroll's identity is going to be, we're joining the super chain, but I think Sandy is super duper smart. I think they have an awesome team, and they will find a strong identity, and we will look to catalyze that. And we've been doing crazy IFO business. We've been trying to do DeFi 2021 stuff on Scroll, and it's been kind of failing just because farmers are too good at price discovery, price being zero in their minds. So we've been cranking things back and like constricting float, constricting supply growth, and are looking for where to aim our cannon. So that's the Lore story. Thank you, Arrow, for being interested. And I love the Lore brand, and I'm excited to figure something cool out with it.
Appreciate that. Good stuff. Killis, always in the house. Crypto airdrop. Crypto is the top 20 biggest holder of US debt. Yes, it is. Vis-a-vis, oh yeah, USDC and USDT. We need the endogenous crypto to really get the most interesting expression of where this market is heading. A couple of years. Anything else? Anything else? Teddy, last question. Check out the USDC, USDT pool imbalance happening right now. On which chain? Because this is a market of markets. Bug bounty exploit getting crazy. But what is price? And price is relative, and that's going to be fascinating how arbitrage, especially cross-chain arbitrage, evolves over the coming years. And with omni-chain fungibles, like if you get cross-chain of like a unit of account down to 1 second, and you have liquidity in that unit of account, that changes the entire arbitrage equation for the entire crypto space as a whole. And that's
Yeah.
what like Stargate facilitates. You're not going through a bridge trying to find liquidity on one chain or another. You're literally burning on one chain, transmitting a message to mint on another chain, and that clearly doesn't have the same time to execute.
Have you read the Codex USD paper yet?
Not
Or just the money supply paper?
just the money supply.
You should read the Codex USD paper. I think you'll like it.
Aha. 4, 8, 12 years, there is no such thing as a market or market of markets. It's all just one big market, arbitrage to seamlessly.
Yeah, right. On-chain arbitrage, omni-chain arbitrage is slowly getting better than I'm a market maker. I have a big pile of money on Binance, and I'm just arbing against Binance all the time. And I think it'll probably be a couple years before it's good enough, because like the interoperability standards are a little disjointed. But keep an eye on the super chain. It's like their plans are pretty awesome.
Yeah, that like omni-chain fungible from Stargate compared to Superchain 1.0, that's a whole different thing because Superchain 1.0 is built into the actual infrastructure itself.
Yeah,
It's
and
kind
and
of
I'll be
like
talking about it in a few hours with the Optimism team on their
ah,
Twitter or wherever. I don't know. They're another StreamYard thing, so it's always a toss up where it's going to actually be.
well, in consideration of time, but why don't you tell everyone where you will be later today and what you think is interesting information to end the stream with?
Sure. I don't know where exactly I'll be, so follow OXBeebus underscore. If you want, I'll I'm sure shill it 10 minutes beforehand. Um, follow Codex.org on Twitter, COD3XORG, to keep up with what we're up to, and join the Discord. We're doing like some point stuff right now. It's all community based. We're not trying to grow supply necessarily yet, but there's going to be a lot of cool opportunities, and Codex CDX is like the ultimate like umbrella, company, whatever that's going to be driving the growth of all of our systems. So if you thought this was a cool podcast, then I like you already, and you should hang out with us.
Nice way to wrap it up. Appreciate your time very much. Wednesday, October 23rd, 12:52 p.m. 314 people made it to the end of the stream. You will all be a little bit more rational because of it. I wish you a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.
Thanks,
Cheers.
everybody.